So maybe this is a refresher for some of you of just watching me center, watching me pull. If you have questions as I'm going, please just ask. And I apologize that, you know, some of this may be review for some of you and you're like, okay, I really don't want to see this until I get to the point where I get to the cylinder, you know? So I am really not leaving much of a base at all. I mean, really, it's probably about like this once I compress. I don't even know if I did that on camera, and I apologize. I'm so used to being like this and not this. It was probably like this. So have any of you guys watched my YouTube videos as a refresher at all? You watched them last semester? If you need a refresher, I did post some new videos on just pulling a cylinder and things like that. If you feel like you need some assistance with that, but if you're doing fine with like the basics, then that's great. So how I start this is that I still really do pull my cylinder to its entirety. Like, I don't leave extra weight anywhere. So, who has practiced throwing cylinders so far? How is the height? 8?
Yeah, I couldn't really get to
Okay, so what do you feel is the issue? Anyone, what's the issue?
I was leaving too much on the bottom. I got from the 7 and it was so thin. And like 3/4 of the way up, but I knew there. So I always struggle with how to do that right.
Lifting all the clay from the bottom. Okay. So, you know, a few things is that like when I'm pulling, I think it's important to understand like, and this sounds really weird, but there's a few things. One is being very, very attentive to how your hands are. If your hands are not remaining like this, the inside hand being slightly higher than the outside hand, you will not achieve the height. And it's really weird because I remember this like it was yesterday. I was learning, you know, a little bit about pulling and forming cylinders and whatever. And my teacher came up to me and he said, make sure your hands are like this. Because if they switch at all or they line up, you're not gonna feel that clay lift. And just be so in tune with that as you're working. It sounds weird. The other thing that I think that helps me in pulling taller, and I've talked about this a little bit in my intro courses, is how I position my body when I'm pulling. All right, so I'm at a point where now I could stop here, right? This is a common place to kind of stop. There's a good amount of weight down here though, but this is common to be like, looks pretty good, but I can still make this taller. So this sucks because what happens is that all you do is see my head at this point. I'm gonna see if this works a little better. Okay. You can still see that, yeah? Okay. All right. So I am gonna lean all the way over here. Okay, so I'm really on my right side. I am gonna indent all the way, like look where my head is. Okay, I'm indenting. Now watch my body change. So I'm gonna start lifting as I'm lifting the clay. Now as soon as I can take my inside hand out and touch my fingers, I do. And now I'm all the way to here. What's really hard is to stay like this without pushing in the whole way, okay? Because you're trying to make it taller, but you're like, how do I do that like this? You have to, at some point, engage your body in it and allow that work from your core to happen. I know it sounds odd, but try it. So again, I'm all the way down. Also, notice how slowly the pull is. Straightening up. Straightening up. And all the way up. All right, I don't know how tall that is, but it seems fine. All right. One of these I'll just cut in half so you guys can see too, but I want to do at least some work on how I change the form, gesture, whatever. All right, so a few things. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll cut all this down. And I have a few little things. Like one little thing, and you can make these, is using like a credit card or whatever. You can make these little things like this in different shapes and whatever. And if I want to use something like this, put my hand all the way inside and I'll push this up against the form. This will give me a nice little foot, automatic. I do not need to trim this, but I'm not really thrilled about how that looks. So I'll work on this like I'm working on a sculpture. It really is. It's kind of like that. I'm going to take this and I'm going to be like, all right, I want this line out of there then. All right, take some of this slurry off. All right, so I have an interesting looking base now. That's cool. Now let's see about the rim. I like to use this tool a lot of times on the rim. Give myself a nice little angle there. I don't like to do it all the time, but sometimes it just changes things up. I also like to use a piece of plastic or a chamois. If you have a chamois, you could use that. I tend to lose mine, so I don't always have one. Put that there. Take a little bit more of the slurry off. Sometimes I like to use this tool. Give that a little bit of movement. Say I feel like that got a little weird right there. I'm just gonna touch it back. So I'm just softening, kind of sculpting and playing with this. What would happen if I pushed out just a little bit now? It's a neat looking form. What happens now if I position this slightly inward? So I'm playing with gesture. I'm playing with the position of the lip. I'm playing with how the foot is. Let's re-steady that a little bit. It's neat. Make sure I get all the water out of the interior. You know what, I'm not satisfied with that actually. I'd like this to be a little bit further in. Yeah, that's much nicer. So these little subtle things make a big difference in how a cylinder may appear. Do me a favor, could you grab me one of those boards? I forgot to bring one. Thank you. So even if in the beginning you cannot achieve the height, I encourage you to keep the cylinder to work on things such as this, gesture, beginnings, endings, changes in volume, things like that. And you will get better. One of the big things that's so great too is that if you save the forms, you'll be able to see as you're working how much taller you're getting. And sometimes, if it ends up that at a certain point I get to a certain height and then I'm doing worse and I'm gonna keep getting shorter, maybe it's time for me to take a break. And that's what it's telling me. So all that stuff is giving you information. Some of you may have some success as well. We were talking a little bit about this, Mary and David and I. Changing the way that you do your initial pull. I'm still gonna, I always like to do this to kind of improve the way the form looks. All right, so knuckle pull. Here, put pressure in, pause. And get that first pull up. You have a lot of weight for that first pull. You can be pretty aggressive. That is the only time that I would do a knuckle pull. So just FYI, counting in my head, that was 35 from start to finish. 35 for the pull, okay? So the other thing, again, and I mentioned this, was that I'm pulling very slowly in order to achieve the height that I want. Okay, that's probably full enough. I don't know what this height is. I mean, I'm curious now. Remember, I weighed 2 pounds. That one's like 9.5, 10. One's like 10. It's because I expanded that one out a little bit more. Alright, so
That's 2 pounds.
it's 2, yeah. And again, remember, I've been doing this a little bit longer than most of you, so it will take some practice. So let's say for this one, I'm gonna leave this little bit of clay here instead. I'm deciding I'm not gonna cut it all down, but I'm gonna work with how this base is here. Oh, thank you. Give myself a nice little cut. I really do like to remove a lot of the slurry from the piece. It makes the form look a little bit just like cleaner to me, and it helps me understand it a little bit better visually. So with that one, I'm really playing with volume. And I'm really playing with the shape going inside the lip of it. A lot of times, like, I don't know if, you know, you guys think about this, but when I'm trying to figure out, let's say, a new form, a new mug that I want to make, a different piece, I do this a lot. I'm playing with like how the planes of the form look, how the lip looks, how volume is. I'm really just playing with ideas. And so that's the idea of this, is not only for you to practice just the basics of wheel throwing and pulling, but it's to really kind of really start looking at how you could make a form different and unique. How to not just go by the same old standards of what you've done before, which is very easy to get kind of trapped into, or what has worked. So this is a challenging assignment, but I know you guys are up for it. And I could just keep throwing cylinders here and bore the crap out of you, like my teacher used to do. My teacher used to make us watch him throw for 3 hours. No joke. And we were not allowed to speak at all to each other. He would call us out. He would be like, is there something you want to share with everyone? 3 hours! But man, he was a great potter. But after a while, I mean, you're just like, okay, I've seen everything. Really, 3 hours. It's kind of nuts, huh?
Who was your teacher?
James Makins.
James?
Makins. He's a really well-known potter. Lives in New York City. Still is teaching at University of the Arts to this day. And I mean, I love his work. I mean, man, it's stunning. And he is an amazing freaking potter. And he taught me how to be very disciplined. Without a doubt, like that's who I learned how to be very disciplined from. He's the one that came up to me when I was all excited because I started throwing like larger forms. And so I thought they were so great. And he came up to me and he said to my face, "So Jess, if you can't make it good, make it big, right?" And I was crushed. But he was right. He was totally right. They were big pots, but they were crap. They were total crap. And he called me out, and I was like, man, I can't do anything right. But, you know, it was what it was. So, you want me to cut one of these in half?
Sure.
Sweet. Try and get it so it'll really show how thin it. I'm not gonna be able to move that. You guys are gonna have to come over. It's gonna collapse if I move it. But that's the one.
That's thin.
So you can see how little clay too I have at that bottom. So if you're not leaving this much clay, this could also be a reason of not achieving height because you're not used to that. So maybe one or two of them, cut it in half and see how much clay am I really leaving at the bottom here. This is plenty for me to wire cut through. This is plenty for me to not cut, you know, destroy once I'm cutting it. And you're not going to be trimming these. So this is totally fine. You don't have to get them this thin. Remember, this is 2 pounds of clay and I got that height. So you don't have to go like that. But that is also a big problem for a lot of people is that they think they're leaving a small amount of clay and they're really leaving a lot more than they think. So you guys have questions for me? You can keep watching me throw or ask me questions if you would like. Would anyone like me to help them individually?
Like what?
Individually. Would anyone like me to help them individually? Okay, so the plan is I did this demonstration. This is the demonstration on the cylinders that you guys are supposed to have. From this point forward, what I'm probably going to be doing in the next classes, you guys are going to have work time. There's no need of me repeating a demonstration of this. This is probably